The rain in New York City that night wasn't just rain, it was a punishment. It hammered down like the city itself was trying to wash away the sins committed inside those glass towers. Leo sat in the driver's seat of the black Mercedes Maybach, the engine idling smoothly, the climate control keeping the expensive leather dry and warm. He was parked right outside the entrance of the Sterling Tower, a monument to money and poor taste, waiting for the man who paid his bills and simultaneously ruined his life, Mr. Jonathan Sterling. Leo had been driving for Sterling for 6 years. 6 years of silence, of listening to the clipped, cruel phone calls, of watching Sterling treat waiters, security guards, and, most frequently, his own employees like disposable coffee cups. Leo was invisible. That was his job, to be the quiet, polished extension of Sterling's wealth, a man who saw everything but said nothing. He was 45, solid, reliable, and desperately needed this salary for his daughter's college fund back in Queens. So, he stayed. He watched the world from behind bulletproof glass and learned exactly how little human decency cost when you had billions. Tonight was already rough. It was 9:30 p.m., 2 hours past his scheduled end time, and Sterling was still upstairs, finalizing a deal. That usually meant Sterling was enjoying, humiliating a junior VP. Leo knew the drill. He leaned his head back slightly, listening to the rhythmic sweep of the wipers, thinking about the meatloaf his wife had promised to save him. Then he saw her. She wasn't standing under the awning where the doorman usually held court. She was standing about 20 feet out near the curb, completely exposed to the downpour. She was young, maybe early 20s, and shivering. Her clothes, a cheap cotton dress that was now plastered to her body, suggested she wasn't part of the Sterling executive world. She clutched a large, damp manila envelope to her chest like a shield. Leo felt a familiar tug of pity, the kind he had learned to instantly suppress. People often waited for Sterling. Sometimes they were nervous investors, sometimes desperate employees hoping for a word. This girl looked different. She looked defeated before the battle had even started. She kept glancing nervously at the main revolving door. She looked cold, so deeply cold that her skin had that bluish tint. Leo wished he could at least pull the car closer to offer some shelter, but Sterling demanded the exact spot, always. A few minutes later, the main doors hissed open and the man himself strode out, Jonathan Sterling. He looked immaculate, naturally. His tailored suit was perfectly dry, his silver hair perfectly combed. He carried a sense of entitlement that smelled faintly of expensive cologne and fear. Leo quickly opened his door, grabbed the large black umbrella from the sidewell, and hustled around the car, snapping it open just as Sterling reached the curb. "Finally, Leo, what took you?" Sterling grumbled, slipping into the back seat without acknowledging the rain Leo was currently standing in. "I was here precisely at 7:30, sir," Leo replied, neutrally, closing the door firmly. He started to walk back toward the driver's side when he heard a small, desperate voice. "Mr. Sterling, sir, please, wait." The girl, who Leo now realized was Clara, rushed forward, dodging the umbrella Leo was holding. She was breathing heavily, her face streaked with a mix of rain and, Leo realized with a sudden jolt, tears. Sterling, who had just been adjusting his tie in the rearview mirror, froze. He didn't turn around. He just sighed, a sound of supreme annoyance, the kind of sound a king makes. He just sighed, a sound of supreme annoyance, the kind of sound a king makes when a peasant dares to breathe his air. "What is it, Clara?" Sterling's voice was low, but every syllable was coated in venom. He still hadn't turned around. He was talking to the reflection in the tinted window. Clara rushed the remaining steps, ignoring the sheets of water, soaking her hair. Leo instinctively moved the umbrella slightly, trying to cover her too, but Sterling snapped, "Keep that thing on me, Leo. I'm not paying you to water the weeds." Leo immediately pulled the umbrella back, his face burning. The small act of kindness instantly crushed. Clara didn't seem to notice. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. "Sir, please, just look at the envelope. I know you rejected the preliminary design, but I worked all night. I brought the final projections. The environmental impact models are included, everything you asked for. This commission, it's perfect for the Queen's project." She held the soggy manila envelope out toward the backseat window. It was obvious she was pleading for more than a project. She was pleading for her survival. Sterling finally lowered his window just an inch, letting the cold, wet air rush into the climate-controlled Maybach. He didn't look at the envelope. He looked at her reflection in the glass, a look of bored contempt. "Clara," he drawled, pronouncing her name like it was something sticky on the bottom of his shoe. "Do you know the difference between a good idea and a bad idea?" She nodded desperately. "Yes, sir. The bad idea requires me to stand in the rain and listen to sobbing. The good idea is already funded and generating revenue. Yours is the former." He paused, letting the silence hang, thick with the sound of the rain. "You have passion, Clara. I'll give you that. You also have terrible judgment. I told your department head yesterday, I don't care about the environmental impact of the Queen's project. I care about the return on investment. Your designs are pretty, they are ethical, and they are 5% too expensive. That's 5% out of my pocket, which means you are 5% useless to me." Clara gasped, the sound thin and raw. "But, sir, I found a way to cut the material costs. It's all in here. I sourced a local supplier, non-union labor. It brings the cost down to—" "Stop," Sterling ordered. He raised a hand inside the car, a gesture of ultimate dismissal. "I don't want your envelope. I don't want your local supplier. I want silence. You're dismissed, Clara, permanently. And, frankly, the desperation is unattractive. Go home. You're done." He rolled the window up with a smooth, silent whir. Leo stood there, holding the umbrella over the man who had just professionally murdered this girl's career and dignity. The rain continued its steady assault. Clara just stood frozen, the manila envelope starting to disintegrate slightly in her hands. Sterling tapped sharply on the glass partition separating the front and back. "Seats. Drive, Leo." Now. Leo felt a cold wave of nausea. He wanted to turn and yell at Sterling, wanted to tell him that no amount of money justified that kind of cruelty. But he saw his daughter's face, the tuition bill, the mortgage. He was trapped. He was just the driver. He gave Sterling a quick nod and began to move around the hood toward the driver's side. As he reached the front fender, Clara moved. She wasn't crying now. The tears were gone, perhaps washed away by the torrent, but the look on her face was chilling. It wasn't defeat. It was a sudden, absolute emptiness, like a building that had been completely gutted by fire. She darted forward, not toward the back of the car where Sterling was, but straight toward Leo. Leo paused, instinctively raising his hand slightly, expecting her to try and thrust the soggy envelope at him, begging him to deliver it. But she didn't. She reached out, her fingers icy cold and surprisingly strong, and grasped his forearm just above the elbow. Her eyes, wide and strangely dry, fixed on his. They were dark, intense, and held a depth of knowledge that seemed impossible for someone so young and recently humiliated. "Leo," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. She knew his name. Of course, she knew his name. The drivers were just part of the furniture. Before Leo could react, before he could worry that Sterling might see this unauthorized interaction, she pressed something hard and heavy into his palm. It was a swift, practiced movement, the kind a spy might use in a movie. "Take this," she breathed, her lips inches from his ear. "It's yours now. Don't open it until you are completely alone, and don't, ever, tell him you saw me tonight. He needs to think I simply vanished." Then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she released his arm and stepped back, melting into the downpour. She didn't look back at the car. She just turned and walked away from Sterling Tower, the manila envelope dropping unnoticed into a flooded gutter. Leo felt the adrenaline spike. He quickly palmed the object she had given him and slid into the driver's seat. He closed the door, cutting off the city noise and the rain. Leo! What was that delay? Did that pathetic creature try to give you something? Sterling's impatient voice came through the intercom. Leo started the car, pulling slowly away from the curb. No, sir. She just stumbled near the curb. I told her to move along. He kept his voice steady, neutral. The lie tasted like ash. Good. Filth belongs in the gutter, not touching my vehicle. Now drive, the usual route. I need to make a few calls. As the Maybach glided smoothly into the traffic, Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He gripped the steering wheel with his left hand, while his right hand, resting in his lap, was curled tightly around the mysterious object. He risked a quick, furtive glance down. It wasn't a USB drive or a tiny note folded into a square. It was a key. Not a modern key, either. This was heavy, made of tarnished brass, with an ornate, almost Victorian-era head and a long, thick shaft. It felt substantial, like it belonged to a large old lock, a safe, or perhaps a massive front door. And tucked around the key's ring was a small, stiff piece of cardstock, like a high-end business card, but blank on the front. Leo couldn't look closer while he was driving. Sterling was already on the phone, barking orders to some unseen subordinate about the 5% cost overrun. Leo focused on the road, trying to keep his breathing even. He was driving a multi-million-dollar machine through a torrential downpour, and his mind was screaming. What did she just give me? For the next 40 minutes, as they drove from Midtown across the bridge and out toward the exclusive estates of Greenwich, Connecticut, where Sterling maintained his primary residence, Leo was a ghost, piloting the car on autopilot. Every time Sterling paused his phone call, Leo tensed, expecting the man to suddenly notice the tension radiating off his driver. But Sterling was too self-absorbed. He never looked forward. He only looked at the numbers on his phone screen. Finally, they reached the massive, electronically gated entrance of Sterling's property. The gates swung open, revealing the long, winding drive leading up to the Georgian mansion. Leo pulled up to the main portico, shielded from the rain. Wait here for 10 minutes, Leo. I need to check the security. Logs. Then you can go home. But be ready for an early start. 6 sharp tomorrow. I'm flying to Miami. Yes, sir. Sterling exited the car, disappearing inside the mansion without a backward glance. Leo sat in the silent car, the engine still running, the 10 minutes stretching out like 10 years. He waited until the front door clicked shut and the lights in the foyer dimmed slightly. He pulled the heavy brass key and the card out of his pocket. His hands were shaking slightly. He flipped the card over. On the back, written in elegant, precise handwriting, were 4 lines. 3785 Bayside Ridge Road, Oyster Bay, Long Island. The iron gate is open. Tell no one, especially him. Leo stared at the address. Oyster Bay. That wasn't just wealthy, that was old money, generational wealth. Bayside Ridge Road. He knew that area vaguely. It was right on the water, properties valued in the tens of millions. And it was definitely not one of Sterling's known properties. Sterling owned in Greenwich, Manhattan, and Miami. Leo pulled out his phone, making sure the screen brightness was low so the light wouldn't reflect into the house. He typed the address into a quick search. The image that popped up made him suck in a sharp breath. It was a sprawling estate, not modern glass and steel like Sterling's taste, but a magnificent ivy-covered stone manor set back from the road behind towering oak trees. The listing stated it was built in 1928, known locally as the Heron's Nest. It had been off the market for years. The estimated value was staggering. Why would Clara have the key to this mansion? And why would she give it to me? Leo felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He was a simple man, a driver, a father trying to make ends meet. He did not belong in a conspiracy involving mansions and heartbroken young women. He looked at the key again. It was real. It felt ancient and cold in his hand. The possibilities raced through his mind. 1. A trap. She was setting him up. Maybe she was unstable, and this was some kind of elaborate prank that would get him arrested for trespassing. 2. A test. Sterling was testing his loyalty, using Clara as bait. But Sterling had seemed genuinely oblivious, focused only on his 5%. 3. Something stolen. Did she steal the key? If so, why hand it to him, the one person most likely to be searched or connected to Sterling? 4. A cry for help, revenge. This was the most terrifying option. Clara had been utterly crushed tonight. Was this key a piece of evidence? A confession? A request for him to find something she couldn't retrieve herself? The 10 minutes were up. The front door of the mansion opened and Sterling appeared under the portico, looking impatient. Leo quickly slipped the key and the card into the small zipped inner pocket of his coat, the one he usually reserved for emergency cash. "All right, Leo, you're done. Don't be late tomorrow, and clean the car. It looks like a swamp out there." "Will do, sir. Good night." Leo executed the perfect three-point turn and headed back down the long driveway. As soon as he was safely past the gates and onto the public road, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The drive back to Queens was agonizingly slow. The rain hadn't let up, and the highways were slick. Every mile he drove, the key seemed to grow heavier in his pocket, a silent, demanding presence. He kept replaying the scene. Clara, soaking wet, eyes burning with a strange mix of despair and resolve, pressing the brass artifact into his hand. Tell no one, especially him. Why Leo? He was nobody. He was furniture. Perhaps that was exactly why. He was the perfect ghost, the invisible man who saw everything but was never suspected of acting. He was the one person who had witnessed Sterling's cruelty firsthand tonight, the one person who might feel an obligation to help, or at least to investigate. He finally pulled up to his modest two-story house in Astoria, Queens. The lights were off. His wife, Maria, and his daughter, Sophia, were asleep. He parked the Maybach in the small driveway, took one last look at the spotless interior, and grabbed his coat. He knew he wouldn't be able to sleep until he looked into this. Inside, the house smelled comfortably of residual meatloaf and detergent. He moved quietly, careful not to wake Maria. He changed into a dry t-shirt and jeans, poured himself a glass of water, and went straight to the small, cramped home office he used for bills and taxes. He pulled out the key and the card. Under the harsh desk lamp, the key looked even more ancient. He ran his thumb over the head. It felt like a family heirloom. He pulled up the map of Oyster Bay again. 375 Bayside Ridge Road. It was secluded, tucked away on a private lane. He spent the next hour doing deep dive searches, cross-referencing names associated with the Heron's Nest. The results were confusing. The estate was last owned by a very old, very private family named Hawthorne. The last living member, an elderly woman, had passed away 3 years ago. The records indicated the property was tied up in a complicated probate case involving distant relatives, but the property itself was supposed to be completely sealed. It was unoccupied. He typed in Clara Sterling. Nothing. No one in the Sterling Empire was named Clara Sterling. He typed in Clara and Sterling Tower. He found a LinkedIn profile. Clara Jennings, Junior Architectural Analyst at Sterling Acquisitions. The profile picture matched the girl in the rain. Clara Jennings. Not a Sterling, just a terrified junior employee who had just been publicly humiliated and fired. But how did a junior analyst get the key to a multi-million-dollar sealed estate? Leo leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He needed to be sensible. He needed to throw the key away, forget the whole thing, and focus on driving Mr. Sterling to Miami tomorrow. But he couldn't. He kept seeing Clara's face, not the weeping face, but the cold, empty one she wore when she pressed the key into his hand. That look was the face of someone who had just lost everything and had nothing left to fear. He felt an obligation, a debt, not to Clara, but to his own conscience. He had stood there, silent and complicit, while Sterling had torn her apart. The only way to redeem that silence was to take this one small, terrifying action. He looked at the clock. 1:30 a.m. He had to be up at 5. He knew what he had to do. He had to go to Oyster Bay. Not tomorrow morning. That was impossible. But tomorrow evening, after he dropped Sterling at the private airport, he would have a few hours of freedom before his next scheduled shift. He opened a private browser window and searched for the fastest route to Oyster Bay, Long Island. He took the key and the card, wrapped them in a handkerchief, and placed them in the bottom of his gym bag, beneath his workout clothes. He climbed into bed next to Maria, who stirred slightly but didn't wake. Leo lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain that was now just a soft drizzle. He was no longer just a driver. He was holding a secret, a heavy piece of brass that felt like the start of something dangerous. The next morning, the exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. He made coffee, ate breakfast quietly, and was back in the Maybach by 5:45 a.m. Sterling was exactly on time, crisp and demanding, reviewing his agenda for Miami. He didn't mention Clara, or the rain, or anything that had happened the previous night. It was as if she had been erased from existence. Leo, I need absolute silence. I have a sensitive video conference call starting as soon as we hit the highway. Understood, sir. The drive to Teterboro Airport in New Jersey was tense and professional. Leo listened to Sterling's side of the conversation, all aggressive posturing and market manipulation. It only deepened Leo's contempt. They arrived at the private hangar. Sterling's sleek Gulfstream G650 was waiting. "Here are your instructions," Sterling said, handing Leo a small, neatly folded card. "Take the car back to Greenwich, park it in the garage, take the rest of the day off, but be back in the city by 6:05 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be back late afternoon." Leo took the card. "Yes, sir. Have a safe flight." Sterling didn't reply, already striding toward the plane, his assistant hurrying behind him. Leo watched the plane's door close. As the massive engine began its whine, Leo felt the tension drain slightly from his shoulders. He was free for the next 30 hours. He drove the Maybach back across the river, through Manhattan, and up to Greenwich. He meticulously cleaned the car, vacuuming the mats and polishing the interior wood, making sure every trace of the previous night's misery was gone. He parked it in the climate-controlled garage, locked the doors, and set the alarm. He then walked to his own modest Honda Civic, which he usually left parked down the street from the mansion. It was 10 a.m. He had planned to go home and sleep, but the key was burning a hole in his mind. He pulled out his phone and typed in the address again. 375 Bayside Ridge Road, Oyster Bay. It was a solid 2-hour drive from Greenwich, possibly longer with traffic. If I leave now, I can be there by noon, check the place out, and be home by 5 or 6. He rationalized the decision. He wasn't going to break in. He was just going to observe. Maybe he would see Clara. Maybe he would see if the gate was truly open. He just needed to know if this was a setup, or if he was involved in something far bigger than a firing. He started the Honda's engine. He drove east, crossing into Long Island, leaving the familiar territory of Queens behind. As he got closer to Oyster Bay, the neighborhoods changed. The landscaping became manicured, the roads narrower, shaded by ancient trees. The houses were set far back from the street, glimpses of stone and slate hidden behind high hedges. Finally, he found Bayside Ridge Road. It was a winding, private lane. He drove slowly, scanning the mailboxes. 369, 371, then 375. The entrance was exactly as described on the card, an old wrought iron gate flanked by massive stone pillars covered in dark green ivy. The gate was about 15 feet wide, heavy, and imposing, and it was slightly ajar. It wasn't swung wide open, but it was pulled back about 3 feet, enough for a person to slip through, or maybe even a small car if you were careful. Leo pulled his Honda onto the shoulder, parking discreetly behind a large clump of rhododendrons. He cut the engine. He sat there for a full 5 minutes, listening to the silence. All he could hear was the distant sound of the ocean and the occasional bird call. The air here was salt-laced and cool. The property was eerie. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt expectant. He looked up the long gravel driveway. He couldn't see the house clearly, only the tops of the massive chimneys and a sliver of the slate roof through the trees. If this was a trap, he was walking right into it. If this was a piece of evidence, he might be tampering with a crime scene. He reached into his bag, pulled out the key and the card, and stared at them one last time. Tell no one. Leo took a deep breath. He was 45 years old, a responsible man, and he was about to trespass on a multi-million-dollar estate because a heartbroken girl handed him a mystery key in the rain. He got out of the car. The gravel crunched loudly under his boots. He walked up to the iron gate. He pushed it gently, and it swung inward with a faint metallic groan. He stepped onto the property of the heron's nest. The driveway was overgrown in patches, suggesting the property truly hadn't been maintained recently. The air smelled dusty and damp. He walked slowly, keeping to the edge of the drive, feeling utterly exposed. Every shadow looked suspicious. He kept expecting a security guard to jump out or a dog to bark. Nothing. The drive curved sharply, and then the house appeared. It was breathtaking. 3 stories of gray, stone with tall, narrow windows, and a vast veranda overlooking what must be the bay. It looked like something out of a classic movie, stately and sorrowful, and it looked utterly abandoned. The windows were dark. Some shutters were slightly askew. Leo approached the heavy oak front door. It was massive, set into an arched stone frame. There was no modern keypad, just a heavy, old-fashioned brass lock and an ornate pull handle. He pulled the brass key from his pocket. It fit the lock perfectly. His heart thumped against his ribs. This was the point of no return. He hesitated, his hand resting on the cool metal of the key. Why did Clara want him to open this door? What was inside? He turned the key. It clicked loudly, the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. He pushed the heavy door inward. It dragged slightly on the threshold, protesting its use after years of dormancy. Leo stepped inside. The air was heavy, cold, and smelled distinctly of dust, old wood, and the faint metallic scent of the nearby ocean. It was pitch black. He fumbled for his phone and turned on the flashlight. He was standing in a cavernous entry hall. A sweeping mahogany staircase dominated the center, leading up into darkness. The floor was inlaid marble, covered in a thick layer of fine gray dust. He swept the flashlight beam around. High, ceilings, dark paneling, and massive, empty picture hooks on the walls where grand portraits must have once hung. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding hollow and small. Silence. He felt a sudden, profound sense of unease. This wasn't just an old house, it felt like a tomb. He moved cautiously, stepping into a large room to the left, which looked like a formal living area. The furniture was covered in white drop cloths, turning the room into a collection of ghostly shapes. He kept the key clutched in his hand. He needed to find something, anything that explained why Clara Jennings, the humiliated junior analyst, had sent him here. He checked the drop cloths. Nothing underneath but heavy, expensive furniture. No signs of forced entry, no signs of recent occupation. He moved into the next room, which appeared to be a library. The room was lined floor to ceiling with empty bookshelves, but on a large, heavy oak desk in the center of the room, one object stood out. It was not covered by a sheet. It was a simple, old-fashioned ledger book, bound in dark leather, resting open on the dusty desk. Leo approached the desk slowly, his flashlight beam fixed on the book. He reached out and gently touched the page. The paper was brittle, yellowed. He scanned the handwriting, which was a beautiful, flowing script, clearly not Clara's. It wasn't a financial ledger. It was a journal. He read the date at the top of the page, June 14th, 1980. He quickly scanned the text, looking for names, connections, anything that made sense. The entry detailed a birthday party mentioning Aunt Eleanor and Cousin Jonathan. Leo froze. Jonathan. He searched the page for Sterling, but didn't find it. He flipped back a few pages, then forward. He found another entry, dated later that same year, October 22nd, 1980. The entry was shorter, more distressed. Jonathan's father came again. The fighting was terrible. He says Jonathan must leave the estate. He says the Hawthorne name is too fragile for his ambition. Jonathan is heartbroken. He only wants to stay here, but his father demands he follow the money in the city. Aunt Eleanor tried to intervene, but the man is a brute. It seems Jonathan Sterling will be forced to become the man his father desires, not the boy he is here. Leo's blood ran cold. Jonathan Sterling. The man who paid his salary, the man of Sterling Tower, the merciless tyrant who had humiliated Clara in the rain, was not just a successful businessman. He had history here. This was his childhood home, or at least the home of his family before he was forced into the world of finance. But if this was his family history, why was the property sealed? And why did Clara have the key? Leo flipped back to the very first page of the journal. There was a dedication written in the same elegant hand. To my dearest Clara, may the truth always guide you. Clara, the name of the journal owner who wrote in 1980. Leo felt a chill. He flipped further forward, past decades of entries, until he reached a much more recent date. He found a small, loose sheet of paper tucked deep inside the book, bearing a date, from just 2 weeks ago. This handwriting was different. It was hurried, messy, and looked familiar. It was Clara Jennings' handwriting. The note was short and desperate. I know he used the old estate's funds for the initial Sterling acquisition's capital 30 years ago, Aunt Eleanor told me. He promised her he would maintain the house, but he let it rot, and he used the money to build his empire. The paper trail is here, tucked under the loose brick in the fireplace. The key is the only way in. I was supposed to get it out tonight, but he saw me. He knows I know. Leo, if you find this, it means I failed. You were the only kind person he ever ignored. Please, expose him. The heron's nest deserves justice. Leo's phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the desk. Clara Jennings wasn't just a junior analyst. She was related to the Hawthorne family. She was the rightful heir, or at least connected to the estate that Jonathan Sterling had allegedly looted decades ago to fund his empire. The humiliation in the rain hadn't just been about a 5% cost overrun. It had been Sterling executing a final, cruel dismissal of the last person who knew his secret, his original sin. Leo looked toward the massive stone fireplace. He was holding the key to Jonathan Sterling's downfall. Leo stared at the note, the fine print of Clara Jennings' urgent handwriting seeming to vibrate under the beam of his phone's flashlight. The heron's nest deserves justice. He had been right. This wasn't a trap for him. It was a desperate attempt by Clara to expose the man who had stolen her family's legacy. The realization hit Leo with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just holding a key to an old house, he was holding the key to Jonathan Sterling's entire empire. Leo, quickly, snapped his phone light back on and focused on the massive stone fireplace. It was built of dark granite, imposing and cold. He knelt, pushing aside the thick layer of dust and a few stray bits of ancient wood ash. He ran his fingers along the mortar lines. The note said a loose brick. He searched near the base, then along the side. Nothing seemed obvious until he reached the third row up on the right side. He pressed hard against a brick that was slightly darker than the rest. It gave way with a faint grating sound. He worked his fingers into the gap, pulling the brick free. It was heavy, and behind it, tucked into the shallow cavity, was a tightly wrapped bundle secured with old twine. It looked like it had been sitting there for decades. Leo's hands were shaking as he pulled the package free. He replaced the brick carefully, dusting the area with his sleeve to make it look undisturbed. He stood up, clutching the package to his chest. It felt like a stack of legal papers, maybe 6 inches thick. The twine was brittle, and he didn't dare try to untie it yet. He swept the flashlight one last time around the library. The ghostly furniture, the empty shelves, the ancient ledger still open on the desk, it was all silent witness to the theft. He had done what Clara asked. Now he had to get out. He backed out of the library, across the entry hall, and toward the front door. He paused, listening intently. Still nothing but silence. He pulled the heavy oak door closed. It clicked, but he didn't dare relock it. He needed to leave the scene exactly as he found it, just in case. The key was his insurance, proof that he had been invited in, even if the invitation was posthumous and indirect. He walked quickly down the long, overgrown driveway. The gravel crunched under his feet, and he felt like the sound was echoing for miles. He pushed the iron gate shut, leaving it slightly ajar, just as he had found it. He slipped back into the Honda Civic, started the engine, and pulled away from 375 Bayside Ridge Road without looking back. As he drove, heading west, back toward Queens, the adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by a dull, throbbing fear. He had committed a serious act of trespass and theft, or retrieval, depending on how you looked at it, and he was holding evidence that could send one of the most powerful men in the city to prison. He didn't open the package until he was safely back in his small, quiet home office in Astoria. Maria was still out, running errands, giving him a precious hour of solitude. He cut the twine carefully with a pair of scissors. Inside were brittle, yellowed documents, copies of wills, deeds, and most, damningly, bank transfer records from 1991. The documents detailed the liquidation of the Hawthorne Trust, which managed the assets of the Heron's Nest and the surrounding land, and the subsequent transfer of nearly $50 million into a newly formed holding company named Sterling Initial Capital. The signature on the transfer order was unmistakably Jonathan Sterling's, then a much younger, more ambitious man. This wasn't just a betrayal of a family. It was outright financial fraud. The property had been sealed because Sterling had tied it up in legal knots, ensuring no one could touch the assets or the house itself, which contained the proof of his original crime. Clara, likely working in the architectural department, must have stumbled upon some obscure deed or mention of the Hawthorne Trust, which led her to the journal and the truth. Leo sat back, breathing hard. He had the power to destroy Jonathan Sterling. He looked at the clock. It was 3:00 p.m. Sterling would be back late tomorrow afternoon. Leo had less than 27 hours to decide what to do with this nuclear material. He considered the options again, this time with the evidence sitting right in front of him. 1. Burn it. Throw it in the incinerator. Forget Clara. Keep his job, keep his life stable. But he couldn't. The memory of Sterling's contemptuous face, the sight of Clara standing broken in the rain, It demanded justice. He would never look his daughter in the eye again if he protected this monster. 2. Go to the police. Too risky. Sterling had police contacts, lawyers, and influence. The evidence might be dismissed, and Leo would be instantly implicated, fired, and possibly sued into oblivion. 3. Go public. This was the only way to ensure the documents saw the light of day before Sterling could suppress them. It had to be anonymous, swift, and undeniable. Leo knew the investigative reporters who worked the finance beat in New York City. They specialized in taking down untouchable billionaires. He pulled out his laptop and started working. He spent the next 3 hours meticulously scanning every document, creating high-resolution digital copies. He saved the files onto an encrypted flash drive. He then carefully packaged the original documents, sealing them in an unmarked box with the brass key and the old ledger. He needed to ensure the originals were safe and could be authenticated later. He wrote 3 identical anonymous letters addressed to the investigative desks of 3 major publications: the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and a national news magazine. The letters simply stated, "Proof of the fraudulent acquisition of Sterling Initial Capital, 1991. See attached encrypted drive. The original documents are secure." He needed to drop these packages physically and anonymously. The next morning, Leo woke up feeling strangely light, despite the lack of sleep. He had crossed the line. He was no longer just the driver. He told Maria he had to run an errand for Sterling before his shift started. He took his Honda, drove deep into Midtown, and used 3 different busy mail drop boxes in separate neighborhoods to send the packages. He wore a baseball cap and sunglasses, feeling ridiculous, like a character in a cheap spy movie. By 11:02 a.m., the evidence was out of his hands. He was committed. The clock was ticking down to the moment Sterling would land. He spent the afternoon cleaning the Maybach again, a nervous ritual. He kept his phone silent in his pocket, waiting for the inevitable blast of news. At 5:30 p.m., Leo was back at Teterboro Airport, parked outside Sterling's private hangar. The weather was clear, a stark contrast to the night before. He checked his coat pocket. He had kept the encrypted flash drive and the original documents box in a secure location at home. All he had on him was his wallet, his phone, and a profound sense of impending doom. At 5:55 p.m., the Gulfstream G650 taxied into the hangar. Jonathan Sterling emerged, looking tanned, refreshed, and utterly ruthless. He walked with that confident, proprietary stride that Leo had witnessed thousands of times. Leo opened the door and hustled to meet him with the umbrella, though it was sunny. It was a habit, a ritual of servitude. Sterling didn't even look at him. He was already talking into his phone, clearly agitated about a low-level problem. "Yes, tell them the Miami deal is closed. I don't care about the press release timing. Just get it. Done." "No," I said. "No, delays, Henderson." Sterling slid into the back seat. Leo closed the door and moved to the driver's side. As he was pulling away from the hangar, the partition window separating the back from the front slid down with a quiet hiss. "Leo," Sterling said, his voice clipped, "take the FDR drive. I need to be in the office in 20 minutes. And turn on the news channel, CNBC." Leo complied, turning the dial to the financial news channel. He kept the volume low, just audible. The drive was silent for the first 10 minutes, broken only by the anchor's voice discussing the day's market close. Sterling was absorbed in his phone, probably reading emails. Then the calm shattered. The anchor's voice, which had been discussing bond yields, suddenly spiked with urgency. "We interrupt this program for breaking news. Sources confirm that investigative reporters at the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times are simultaneously preparing to publish a massive exposé detailing what they claim is the fraudulent foundation of Sterling acquisitions." Unconfirmed reports suggest the company's initial capital in the early 90s was derived from the illegal liquidation of the Hawthorne Trust, a prominent Long Island estate. We are awaiting comment from Jonathan Sterling, the CEO. The screen immediately cut to a large, unflattering photo of Jonathan Sterling, with the banner "Fraud Allegations" flashing beneath it. Leo gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He risked a quick glance in the rearview mirror. Jonathan Sterling was not moving. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't pacing. He was completely frozen, the expensive phone held halfway to his ear, his face draining of color. The tan seemed to vanish, leaving a sickly gray pallor. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. The voice of the anchor continued, describing the specifics of the alleged theft, the use of the Hawthorne Trust assets, and the deliberate obfuscation of the property's legal status over the last 3 decades. Sterling slowly lowered his phone. He didn't hang up, he just let the dead line go silent. The partition window slid down again, this time with a sharp, angry buzz. "Stop the car, Leo." Sterling's voice was a low rasp, devoid of its usual arrogance. It was the sound of pure, concentrated shock. Leo pulled over to the shoulder of the highway, near the entrance ramp to the bridge. Traffic whizzed past them, oblivious to the financial catastrophe unfolding inside the black Maybach. "How?" Sterling whispered, looking not at Leo but straight ahead, through the windshield. How could they possibly know about the Hawthorne Trust? That was buried, sealed. He turned his head slowly, locking eyes with Leo in the rearview mirror. His eyes were cold, calculating, and suddenly terrifyingly focused. "You were there that night, weren't you, Leo?" Sterling asked, his voice now dangerously smooth. "The girl, Clara, she was hysterical. Did she give you something? Did she try to pass off that garbage envelope?" Leo looked straight ahead, focusing on the yellow lines of the highway, the roar of the traffic. He remembered Clara's face, the empty resolution in her eyes, the cold brass key. He remembered his own complicity, the years of silence. "She stumbled near the curb, sir," Leo said, his voice calm and steady. "I told her to move along. I saw her drop a damp envelope into the gutter." Sterling studied him, his eyes narrowing, searching for any flicker of doubt or deception. Leo's face remained neutral, the perfect mask of the invisible driver. "You know, Leo," Sterling continued, leaning forward slightly, "you've been with me a long time. 6 years. You're reliable. You know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. This is going to be a nasty legal fight. I need loyal people, people who can keep secrets." He paused, a faint, desperate attempt to regain control. "If you know anything about this leak, anything at all, even a rumor, tell me now, and I will. Ensure that your daughter's college fund is fully covered. Double, triple even. You'll be set for life. You and your family will never worry again." The offer was staggering. It was everything Leo had worked 6 years for, handed to him on a silver platter. He could take the money, keep his mouth shut, and walk away clean. But he saw Clara in the rain. He saw the ledger. He saw Jonathan Sterling's signature on the fraud document. Leo took a deep breath. He reached down and smoothly turned the key in the ignition, cutting the engine. The resulting silence inside the Maybach was deafening. He reached up, grasping the heavy brass key to the Maybach, the one that cost more than his car. He didn't turn around. He didn't look at Sterling. He simply held the key out, placing it carefully on the edge of the central console, right on the ledge of the partition. "Mr. Sterling," Leo said, his voice respectful yet final. "I am sorry, but I can't accept your offer." Sterling scoffed, a quick, sharp sound of disbelief. "You can't accept? What are you, an idiot, Leo? This is 10 times your annual salary." Leo reached down and unbuckled his seatbelt. He felt a wave of relief wash over him, a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. I need to protect my daughter, sir," Leo continued, his eyes fixed ahead. "And protecting her means showing her that some things are more valuable than money." He opened his door. The traffic noise rushed in. Sterling's voice rose, laced with pure fury. "You can't just leave. You're under contract. Get back here, Leo. You are fired. You hear me? Fired. You will never work in this city again." Leo stepped out of the Maybach. He closed the driver's door gently, almost reverently for the last time. He walked around the hood and leaned down, slightly to the partition window. He looked Jonathan Sterling in the eye. The man was red-faced, sputtering, his expensive suit rumpled by panic. "I quit, Mr. Sterling," Leo stated clearly. "And regarding being unable to work in this city again, I think you will find that is a problem you will be facing, not me." Leo turned his back on the disgraced billionaire sitting stranded on the side of the FDR Drive. He started walking toward the entrance ramp, blending into the stream of pedestrians and the chaos of the city. He walked away from the black, bulletproof luxury and toward the subway station that would take him home to Queens. He didn't have the Maybach, but he had something far more valuable. He had his conscience, and he had the key to his own freedom. He didn't know what would happen to Clara Jennings or if she was safe, but he knew one thing. The Heron's Nest had finally gotten its justice. And Leo, the invisible man, the quiet driver, had finally found his voice, not with a shout, but with a simple, righteous act of defiance. He walked, feeling the warm evening sun on his face, a free man in a city that suddenly felt a lot less oppressive.